Hi, welcome to Heart Containers, a channel dedicated to discussing all things Nintendo. Since it's the new year, I thought it would be fun to start by talking about what we can expect from the company in 2019. I figured we'd split it up into three parts. The first being the Nintendo 3DS. What's going on with the console? Are they going to retire it finally in 2019? The second part being Nintendo Switch. Are we going to get that hardware iteration people keep talking about? And what does the software lineup look like? Is Metroid Prime 4 coming? And the third part is kind of like a catch-all. We'll talk about mobile, online, all that goodness. So let's start with the 3DS. Ever since the launch of the Nintendo Switch, people have been asking about the 3DS in terms of why does it still exist? Technically speaking, the Switch is a portable, the 3DS is a portable, so they should clash, right? Well, the truth has always been that they do and they don't. Nintendo has been adamant at repeating that the reason why the 3DS exists is because it serves a very different demographic than the Switch. They've used that line over and over again for the past 2 years, and they're still using that line. What we see is that the Nintendo Switch and the current Nintendo 3DS demographic are becoming very, very different. What I mean by that is for our dedicated handheld business, which starts at a price point of $79, we're seeing that it's gravitating much more towards kids, and it literally is becoming their first dedicated gaming device. That puts the 3DS and the Nintendo Switch at two ends of the same Nintendo spectrum. It's this focus on a younger audience that has made the 3DS survive as long as it has. The thing is, resources are starting to slow down on that console. The 3DS didn't see much in terms of new games in 2018. A lot of the games that came out for the console were like ports. You had Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, you had Luigi's Mansion, and you had WarioWare Gold, which was a mix of old and new, so you had styles like that. But in terms of brand new exclusive titles coming to the 3DS, games that are going to attract people to come to that console, especially younger demographics, the only one that I can really think about that stands out is Detective Pikachu. Now let's look forward to 2019, for instance. There's even less. We have two more ports, a Kirby Epic Yarn port and a Mario and Luigi port that has a little more content added onto it. But beyond that, there's really nothing else. It seems very clear that moving forward, the amount of resources that Nintendo's putting into not only making new games, but porting over old games is diminishing for the 3DS. In fact, it's not just the amount of games that are showing a decline. Hardware sales are too. If you take it all the way back to 2014, the 3DS and its family of systems has sold an average of 7 to 8 million units each year. But in 2018, it's the first time that we've seen a significant drop in those numbers, with projections saying that it's probably going to sell about 4 million instead of the usual 7 to 8. So I think that starts to bring up the big elephant in the room. If the 3DS's purpose after the Switch launched was to stay along to appeal to a younger demographic, and all of a sudden in 2018, there are less games to buy, and there are less people buying the console, well, that demographic still needs to be served. The convenient part about all of this is that while the 3DS has been winding down, the Switch has been doing the exact opposite. I feel like over the course of 2018, Nintendo has slowly been grooming the Switch into a console that has a wider appeal than it did in 2017. It started with Nintendo Labo, a project that was no doubt dedicated to a younger demographic. You can take that and combine it with the other projects that they've released in 2018. You have games like Kirby Star Allies. You have games like Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, which are a twist on the normal Pokemon franchises to make them more accessible, to make them more appealing to a wider audience. You even have games that were traditionally more core, that were more challenging, like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, and they added things like Funky Mode. So if 2018 was the decline of the 3DS in serving that demographic, 2018 was also the rise of the Switch in terms of bolstering its library to appeal to a wider audience. I think the reason that we haven't found out about a lot of new games coming to the 3DS in 2019, or even a successor specifically for that console that only appeals to a younger demographic, is because 2019 is the year we're going to see the Switch take over that demographic. Now, I'll talk more about what that could specifically mean in part 2 for the Switch, but I do think 2019 will be the year that the 3DS takes a step back to let the Switch step into that spotlight. Because of that, I don't think we're going to get a lot of new software announcements. I definitely don't think we're going to see like brand new games or new resources put in to 3DS development, because as far as we know, every single major franchise, including franchises that have been handheld staples for generations, like the Pokemon franchise, they're all working on Nintendo Switch. I think at most we'll see like 1 or 2 more ports, but nothing beyond that. I don't think we're going to see any hardware iterations for the system, honestly, in 2019. I think the new 2DS XL is probably the best we're going to get when it comes to that. But to that point, it is possible that they do a price drop on that. I mean, I don't see why not, especially if they are truly phasing out the the 3DS like I suspect they will be, I can definitely see them dropping that price from 150 to 120 or to 100 so that they can get rid of some of that stock. So really, when it comes to the 3DS in 2019, I don't think the future is very bright for the console. I feel like 2019 will finally be the year where Nintendo outwardly takes a step forward and says, look, it's time. It's time for the 3DS to be put to rest. So that's my stance on the 3DS in 2019. But remember, the discussion doesn't end here. In fact, it continues forward. I'm just one guy on the internet giving my opinion. I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you think that the 3DS is going to be on its way out, or does 2019 have a couple surprises in store? Are we going to see some hidden game get ported over that no one expected, or a brand new installment in an old franchise that just comes out of nowhere? Like they bring back F-Zero, for instance, and put it on the 3DS, or is it done? I want you to let me know. So comment below. Reach out to me on Twitter, private message me, whatever you have to do. I want to hear your opinion. As I mentioned earlier, part 2 is going to cover everything Switch related in 2019, what games we can expect, at what time we can expect them, and hardware iterations. My name is Rami, this has been Heart Containers, and thank you so much for watching.